So happy Easter. Happy Easter. Any of you get an Easter basket? 3 of you stand loud and proud. You got an Easter basket. 3 of you, that's great. Sometimes when we enter an idea like Easter, I look for unusual places for great wisdom, and I found some this week, and it came from the cartoon Family Circus. How many of you remember that it's usually one circle, sometimes they'll have 2. This particular Family Circus cartoon, there's the 2 little children, a little boy and a little girl, and they've just found their Easter baskets. And the little boy says, "Who colored all these eggs?" And the sister says, "The Easter Bunny." And then he says, "Well, who gave us these jelly beans?" And the sister says, "The Easter Bunny." "Well, who gave us this chocolate rabbit?" "The Easter Bunny." So the next caption, they're now all dressed up. They're sitting in church, and the minister is standing and says, "And they came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been rolled away. Who could have done this?" they cried. You're ahead of me. So the little boy jumped up and said, "The Easter Bunny." Well, whatever level of authenticity we ascribe to the Easter story, I'm pretty sure we can safely assume it was not the Easter Bunny. But it's interesting how all those symbols over the years have really been blended together. Easter, though, it's a perpetual experience. We celebrate Easter a particular day. I always like to pause at Easter and think that there are people all around the world literally celebrating this day. Many people are celebrating the man Jesus. We in Unity look at the man Jesus, but also, and even more importantly, the idea of the Christ and what that is in each and every one of us. And that's what we're going to talk about some today. But when we look at Easter, it's a time of hope. It's a promise of resurrection and renewal. Reverend Douglas Bottorff wrote, "We celebrate Easter in the spring because all around us we see the resurrection of new life from the dry stalks and branches of apparent death, and we marvel at the tenacity and the proliferation of this mysterious force we call life." I like that. This mysterious force that we call life is the animating force of each and every one of our lives. It is that animating force that causes the sap to rise in a tree. It causes this world to hold the order that it does. I mean, if you ever get truly discouraged, just stop a minute and think that I'm standing still on a world that is twirling around, flying through orbit at a speed we can't fathom. We are really upside down and all around. So if you ever feel upside down and all around, just say, you know what, that animating spirit of life, that one power and one presence is so magnificent, we can't really even wrap our mind around it. And so today we look at it in a way to try to hopefully better identify ourselves as an integral expression and a part of it, in no way really separated. I like what Marianne Williamson said, talking about Easter. She said, "We are here to fly at full wingspan for the glory of the one who sent us." That flying at full wingspan for the glory of the one that sent us. And so Easter, as I said earlier, traditionally the centerpiece is the man Jesus and the idea of the resurrected Christ, or in Unity we would call that our Christ nature. And when we look at the man Jesus, in Scripture it tells us in the Gospel of John, Jesus said, "For this purpose was I sent, to bear witness to the truth, to demonstrate the truth." I'm really struck by what he said, "For this purpose was I sent." How many of us approach life every day feeling like we have marching orders from the other side and can say, "For this purpose was I sent, to be who I'm created to be, to allow the light to shine through me"? He knew that. He said, "For this purpose I was sent." And he also said, "The same Spirit that you see in me, that same Spirit dwells in you." I'll take that in a minute. His message was about the same Spirit you see in me, the same Spirit dwells in you. That any difference you observe between me and yourself is only a difference of awareness, not potential. Jesus would have said, I may be more aware, I may be more awake to my true nature. I may comprehend it more, I may have integrated it more, I may have established it more and be able to demonstrate more from that truth, but the very same Spirit you see in me dwells in all of you. And none of you were a generation that got skipped, that it dwells equally in all of you. Sometimes we tend to think that everybody is a child of God, but we somehow or another got left out. Do you ever feel like that? You somehow missed something, that you just missed something? Well, I can assure you that's not true, that the very same Spirit that dwelled in the master teachers, and in particular this one, Jesus, that same Spirit dwells within us. That's why Jesus said, the things that I do, you shall do these things and even greater, because he knew that it wasn't about what he could do, it was about that Spirit that dwelled in him. When people would marvel at his works, he would say, it's not I, but it's the Father, it's the creative Spirit in me that does the work. And one of his last prayers was, Father, Abba, let them know that they are all one, the same being, and that they are in you as I am in you, that in God we live and move and have our being. That was the prayer, the message that we know this. And so when we look at spiritual tradition, none of the major spiritual teachers throughout history were really religious, but they were all deeply spiritual. Jesus was not a Christian. Now that surprises some people. Jesus didn't write the Bible, and Jesus was not Christian. And Buddha was not Buddhist, and Lao Tzu was not Taoist. That they were spiritual seekers and finders. That all of these spiritual masters followed a path, and they mastered themselves in solitude. They came to discover something through the inner dimension. They came to discover their inner being, and that inner being in unity we call the Christ. That the Christ is the perfect pattern of spirit being human. Christ is God incarnate into form. And every human being has at its essence what we would call the Christ. But that word is just a word. So not to get stuck on a particular word, because the term, what we would call the Christ, goes by many names depending on the tradition that you may find it. At Easter, I always like to highlight a few of these and to point out it's not necessarily Christian. Would you give me the first slide? This comes from Hinduism. In Hinduism, the term Atman would be very similar to the Christian term of Christ. This is the definition of Atman. Atman is the immortal aspect of the mortal existence. It is the self hidden within creation. It is the microcosm representing the macrocosm in all of us, imparting to us divine qualities and possibilities, and providing us with a reason to exist and to experience life. Atman is Brahman. Brahman means God, or the one. So Atman is God itself, the very self which informs, infills, and incarnates into man to participate in life. You see, there's really no better definition for what the Christ is. What did Jesus discover about himself? He discovered this aspect of his being. So whether we call it Christ, Buddha nature, divine spark, satsang, many different names. The next comes from 3rd century BC by the wisdom teachings, that which is attributed to Hermes. The essence of the cosmic Christ is the regenerative and reconciling aspect of the force of pure being and the soul essence within each of us. It represents the unfolding energy of wholeness in human nature. And then I like the next one, which comes from Paramahansa Yogananda, another tradition. The Christ consciousness within you has long remained hidden. Awaken this universal Christ by daily deep meditation, and resurrect yourself from the tomb of ignorance. Ignorance meaning unconscious. And so it's to wake up to this awareness. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said it. This is the last quote. Each of us has within him or her the Christ, just as Jesus did. And we must look within to recognize and realize our sonship, our divine origin and birth, even as he did, by continually unifying ourselves with the one power and the one presence. E.E. Cummings said, it takes courage to grow up and be who you really are. Easter is all about that. It's reminding us that at our core essence, this is who each and every one of us are. and to begin to identify more as a spirit being human rather than a human that has a spirit. But you are spirit being human. There's a great true example that I think really gives picture to this, and I love that it came through the Buddhist tradition. In the 1950s in Bangkok, Thailand, there was a monastery of Buddhist monks that had to relocate because a highway was coming right through their monastery. At the centerpiece of this monastery was this huge 10-foot clay Buddha, this precious Buddha that was their centerpiece. So having to move, they brought in a crane, they hooked it up to the clay Buddha, and as they began to lift it, it was heavier than they realized, and a crack went down the front. They were devastated, lowered it down, and decided to wait until the next day to determine what to do. That night, the head abbot was walking around, keeping an eye on it, and in going around at night, when he shined the light on the crack, something reflected back to him. And he thought, how could that clay possibly be reflecting anything back? He went closer and shined the light again and saw that there was something inside. And so he had the courage to chisel away about 12 inches of that clay, and underneath it, would you show me the slide, what was uncovered is this, a solid golden Buddha that today, if you go to Bangkok, Thailand, have any of you seen this Buddha? Good, some of you have. If you go to Bangkok, you can actually see this Buddha that is over 10 feet, several tons. The value is just incredible. Well, as they uncovered it, what they realized 300 years earlier, Thailand had been known as Siam. There was a Siamese monastery with Siamese monks that had this golden Buddha as their centerpiece. But the Burmese militia were coming through, and the Siamese monks knew they probably were going to be killed, and the Burmese would probably take this and melt it down for its value in gold. So they took their time and covered it in clay, a foot worth of clay. Well, they were all killed. The Burmese left it behind. And so later, for 2 centuries, other Buddhists settled there, all the while thinking they had a clay Buddha as their centerpiece. And it was not until the mid-1950s when a highway was coming through and it had to be moved that the crack happened. How many of you have had a crack happen and you were not happy about it? More than one crack happened and you weren't real happy about it. It's like life sometimes that there's pressure, and this pressure causes cracks. Or we're growing, and when we grow, it can crack us. And yet, all the while, what is really happening is more of our essence can be discovered if we really realize that there's more that is wanting to come through. That's the message of Easter, is reminding us that one same Spirit is available, dwells within, we dwell within it. We are that Spirit being human. That is our nature. And we can either identify as that clay, or we can allow the cracks and the shifts in our life to lead us inward, to discover more of the gold or the God of our being, and to live from that awareness. And so when I began to think about Easter this year, I was very moved that about a week ago, I had someone in my office, and this came through in the form of sort of a download. It's not sort of a download, it is a download. This came through very powerfully, and this is the message for you who are here today, and I really encourage you to take it and let it quicken and awaken you, let it bless you, and it is this: you are the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key. I am the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key. Would you say that with me? I am the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key. You are the golden being. You are spirit being human. The Bible talks about the streets of heaven being paved as gold, meaning that the awareness of our heavenly spiritual nature has to be founded in gold, has to be founded in spirit, that we are spiritual beings, spirit being human. And so who you know yourself to be determines how you show up in life. Who you know yourself to be determines what you believe is available for you. And who you know yourself to be determines what you believe is possible for you. I learned this message in a powerful way a few years ago when I had the privilege of living and serving a Unity Church on Maui. When I first moved, I signed up to take a Hawaiian language and culture class. I wanted to learn more about it. I was at a community college, Maui Community College. So the first night I show up and the class is full of people, and the Kumu was a Hawaiian teacher. He came in with the leaves tied around him and big man, big presence, and just very quickly introduced himself. And then he walked over to a chalkboard and he wrote Malahini, and he drew a line, and then wrote Kama'aina. And he said, line up. We all lined up. And he said, now, write your name on the board and identify who you are. I was second in line. The man in front of me looked Hawaiian to me, and he walked up and he wrote his name under Kama'aina. So I thought, I have no idea what either one of those mean. I felt like a little girl remember in elementary school when you got called up to the board and you're like, oh my God, I didn't want that to happen. And so I walk up to the board and I pick up the chalk and I wrote my name on the line, right down the middle. I thought, I don't know who I am, so I just wrote my name on the line. And I went and sat down, and the Kumu just kind of looked at me. I thought, that's great. I made a great impression, first off. So there's probably 30 people in the class. Everybody comes through the line, and before it was over, more people wrote their name under mine down the line than anybody else. None of us knew who we were because we didn't know the meaning of either one of those words. And the Kumu said, knowing who you are is the most important thing on this island and in life. And he said, you must know who you are. He said, if you are Malahini means a stranger or a visitor. He said, if you are a stranger or a visitor, then we welcome you to our island, but please leave it like you found it. He said, if you are Kama'aina, Kama means child, Aina is the land. If you are Kama'aina, you're a child of the land. Now, see, that doesn't mean Hawaiian. There's another word for Hawaiian. There's another word for native. But Kama'aina is a child of the land. He said, if you know yourself as a child of the land, then whether you walk on this land or any land, you will treat it with respect. You will know how to be in relationship with Mother Nature. And I thought, wow, if I don't get anything else out of that class, what a powerful teaching that who you say you are, who you know yourself to be, determines how you show up. It determines what you believe is available to you and what you believe is possible for you. And so I ask you to begin to think about when life asks you, because do you realize life is asking you every day, who do you say you are? Who do you say you are? Who do you say you are? That you say, I am the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key. That I am the golden being. I may show up and have cracks and all these things in my life, but in my essence, I'm gold, and I choose to bring more of that forth. You're the golden being at the golden gate. I began to think about what is the golden gate. And very quickly it was revealed to me that the golden gate is because we have the nature of being both spirit and form. You see, you are a spiritual being in a human form. We dwell in two realities. We dwell in the reality of possibility, what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven. We dwell in the reality of spirit. When your spirit leaves your body, you will no longer be existing on this earth plane. So you are very much spirit, and you are very much a physical being. That is a great gift. Spirit needs form to express. Spirit needs form to be able to demonstrate itself. And you see, so often we look in the mirror and we see the reflection, and we think we're the reflection, and we forget we're the seer that's seeing all of this, that we're the spirit behind all of this. So to know yourself as the golden being at the golden gate, there's a beautiful true story that really demonstrates what it is and why it's important to recognize every day part of your nature is a being at the golden gate. That, like Martin Luther King Jr. said, the way to peace is peace. Meaning that if we're ever going to have peace on earth, we're going to have to embody peace. It must come from within here. And as I begin to show up as peace in the body right here, then the spirit of peace begins to dwell on the earth. That's what Jesus and other master teachers, when they said, as it is in heaven, so let it be on earth. Let these heavenly qualities, let the spiritual aspect of your nature be what lives you and live through you. A number of years ago, I had a surgery and was kind of going through a challenging time, and someone gave me the book by Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond, Kitchen Table Wisdom. Any of you read the book, Kitchen Table Wisdom? It's a great book. Dr. Raymond is a psychiatrist, a doctor, and she herself has had a medical condition all of her life, and so she's lived with a lot of pain, she's lived with her own challenges, and she has a thriving practice of helping other individuals really discover their inner essence, that they are a golden being, and to live from that in the midst of whatever's going on in their life. So at this very trying time in my life, someone gave me this book, and I opened it up, and the first story I read was this one. She writes, "One of the angriest people I have ever worked with was a young man with osteogenic sarcoma, that's cancer of the right leg. This young man had been a high school and college athlete." Hold on, there's a stink bug up here. Okay. All right, that's never happened before. Bernie got a bird, I got a stink bug. I don't know what that means. Kitchen Table Wisdom, take 2. Okay. I have a friend that accidentally ate one. She thought it was a crumb. Thank God I didn't eat it. She said they taste worse than they smell. So all right, that's not in the script. Amy, are you writing about the stink bug in your... Okay. All right, I got to reel myself back in. Okay. All right, Dr. Riemann writes, "One of the angriest people I ever worked with was a young man with cancer in his right leg. He had been a high school and college athlete, and up until the time he'd been diagnosed, his life had been fabulous. He'd had beautiful girlfriends, fast cars, personal accolades, and recognition. He was really the man that had it going on, the young man. 2 weeks after his diagnosis, they removed his right leg above the knee. She writes, the surgery which saved his life also ended his life as he knew it. Playing ball was a thing of the past, and he really fell into a deep, dark depression. And in that state of depression, his anger turned inward on himself, and he started drinking and taking drugs and was very reckless and almost killed himself. His family took him to Dr. Riemann and said, "You must help our son. He's going to kill himself." She says, "In our second meeting, hoping to encourage him to show his feelings about himself, I gave him a drawing pad and asked him to draw a bug of his... A bug? God. That is not in the writing. I don't know where that came from. God, okay. In our second meeting, hoping to encourage him to show his feelings about himself, I gave him a drawing pad and asked him to draw a picture of his body. He drew a crude sketch of a vase, just an outline. Running through the center, he drew a deep crack. And over the crack with a black crayon, gritting his teeth, he had tears in his eyes. They were tears of rage. It seemed that he was drawing this powerful statement that it was his pain of loss to say, this is a broken vase. It's never going to hold water. It's never going to do what it's supposed to do. It's broken. And the huge black crack in it. She said, after he left, I folded the picture and saved it. It seemed too important to throw away. In time, his anger began to change in subtle ways. He began one session by handing me an item torn from the paper. It was an article about a motorcycle accident in which another young man had lost his leg. His doctors were quoted in length, and when he finished, he said, "These idiots don't know anything about it," he said furiously. Over the next months, he began to bring in more articles from more young people that had had real life challenging illnesses. And Dr. Neiman said, "Well, maybe you could help some of those young people." And he said, "Oh, no." But at the end of the session, he said, "What did you mean maybe I could help some of these young people?" And she said, "Well, I know a lot of these young people you're reading about. Would you like to go into their hospital rooms and share your story?" And he said, I'll do that. And so he went into the first room with the first individual, and really he was uplifted, the other person was uplifted. Over a period of months, he began to visit more and more young people, older people. He was having such incredible growth, and the people that he always visited had such remarkable turnarounds after his presence that the surgeons literally started requesting him to go in and visit with people. One day he went in to see a young woman, very young, and she had to have both breasts removed due to cancer. And she was curled up in a fetal position in the bed. She felt like she was young, that her life was in many ways ended. He walked in and began to talk to her, and she wouldn't even turn over and acknowledge him. He kept talking and saying things, and she never would acknowledge him, and there was some music playing in the background, so he thought, well, so he unlatched his prosthetic leg, and it went plump to the floor. It made a loud noise, and she jumped up, and then he started jumping around on one leg to the music. And she sat up in bed and said, "Fella, if you can dance, maybe I can sing." And they struck up a relationship, and little by little, she went with him, and they both visited people. She said, you know, you've got a real gift for this. She encouraged him to go back to school and pursue a different kind of degree in psychology. And as the story in the months unfolded, they fell in love, got married, and both of their lives really blossomed. But the powerful part, one of the most powerful parts of this story for me is to the end. She says, this is Dr. Raymond again, in our final meeting, we were reviewing the sticking points and the turning points of his life. I opened his chart and found the picture of the broken vase that he had drawn 2 years before. Unfolding it, I asked him if he remembered the drawing he had made of his body. He took it in his hands, Richard. He took it in his hands and looked at it for some time, and he said, you know, it's not yet finished. Surprised, I extended my basket of crayons to him. Taking a yellow crayon, he began to draw lines radiating from the crack of the vase to the very edges of the paper, thick yellow lines. I watched puzzled as he was beaming. Finally, he put his finger on the crack, and he looked at me, and he said softly, "This is where the light comes through." You see, that man had had an incredible transition in his life of realizing that his brokenness had indeed ended one reality of his life. And yet it was through that brokenness, through that crack, that more light, more love, more divine purpose was coming through. You see, to realize that I am the golden being at the golden gate. The golden gate is the place where the light comes through. That it allows each and every one of us to draw forth what is within and to allow it to shine. That those qualities we would like to see in our life, qualities of peace, of love, qualities of beauty, of wisdom, having a clear sense of purpose, having a foundation that knows all is well, even in the midst, I'm not saying that bad things don't happen. Bad things do happen, but good can come from all bad things that do happen. And so it's a matter of saying, whatever has happened, I'm going to use it as grist for the millstone and allow more of my light to shine through. And so I am the golden being at the golden gate, here to bring forth those spiritual qualities with the golden key. So begin to think about the golden key. What is the key? Well, a key unlocks something. A key allows you to gain entrance and access and possession of something. A key is a privilege, and a key is a responsibility. There are three in my family, and I'm the oldest. My sister and I are only 18 months apart, and when we got old enough to come home off the school bus by ourselves and go home, both parents worked, my mother put a key on a piece of yarn, and she said, because we wanted to go home and not stay with the babysitter anymore. We were in our early teens. So she said, okay, you're old enough. So she put that key, the house key, on a string and put it around my neck and said, just wear it, put it under your shirt, keep it safe. And I was so excited. I thought, I'm the oldest. I've got the key. I felt special. And then I thought, oh, I've got the key. That I have to keep up with this. If we lose it, I can't get in. My little sister can't get in. That I felt both of those. That it was a privilege and it was a responsibility. Spiritually, you are the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key. What is the golden key? It is your free will and your power of choice. You see, each and every one of us are the likeness and the image of the one. And we have free will and the choice to show up as that or not. We can identify with the clay. We can identify with the cracks. We can identify with the brokenness, or we can identify with the light that is always seeking to shine through. This Easter and this week, I invite you to know for yourself, I am the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key. Would you say that with me again? I am the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key. Now, if you will say that, that will anchor you to a vibration, the Christ vibration, a frequency of light. And so I ask you this week, and moving forward, when things come up and you find yourself caught up and carried away, to ask, what choice would I make right here? How would I show up right here? What action would I take right here if I knew I was the golden being at the golden gate with the golden key? I want to lead you in a song that will take us into a time of meditation. And the song says, I am here to reveal the divine. I am here to reveal the divine. I am here to reveal the divine. Sing it out. I am. I am here to reveal the divine. I am here to reveal the divine. Now I want you to call to your mind someone that perhaps is a challenge for you, that maybe is a challenge for you to see them as whole, see them okay, see them in the light of forgiveness. If you can't think of anybody, think politics. I'm sure someone will come to a candidate will flash right up. And to hold someone, and you are here to reveal the divine. Not know it yet, but you are here to reveal the divine. And join in with all around the world.